In today's episode, we discuss the multi-launch family coaster that brought the spirit of a beloved dark ride back to life. Welcome to Airtime Traveler. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Roller Coaster History Podcast. You are listening to Airtime Traveler. My name is Nathan Grace, and as always, I'm joined by my wife and lovely co-host.
Hey, I'm Haley Grace.
And thank you for tuning in to this episode of the podcast. It is a few days late, but you'll have to bear with us. There's been a lot of traveling lately, and
it's been so crazy.
I mean, the reason this episode is late is because we were out of town at visiting the park that this episode is about. So
it's true. It's true.
I feel like there's a little forgiveness there, but but we will get back on track because
justified.
Yeah, we'll get back on track because our trip report will still come out on Thursday, and then our Halloween special will be on Halloween, and we'll be back on track after that. But appreciate you giving us a few days, just because, one, there was a ton of announcements last Thursday anyway. Like Universal made their announcement of when Epic Universe is opening, and Silver Dollar City had their announcement about the resort, and so there was like a bunch going on last Thursday anyway. And I was a little bit behind on my research, and I was like,
People
you know what?
weren't paying attention to our podcast.
I was just like, you know what? Let's just push this back a few days. The episode will be better. It won't be on a crazy busy news day, and so it just worked out better that way. So,
true.
Anyway, the only thing I should have talked about this a couple episodes ago, probably, but I did have a fan that reached out to me and was like, you didn't talk about this news story. And so I figured we had to talk about it just because it happened. It was announced probably a month and a half ago, maybe, but we just never talked about it. But Siren's Curse at Cedar Point, the very, very first tilt coaster that should be opening in the U.S. So that announcement kind of took everybody by surprise. I don't think anybody expected Cedar Point to open anything new next year because of all the...
Where, like, the whole track
the big... Yeah.
That's the one I will never get my butt on. Heck no.
It's funny that... what is it about that freaks you out? Is it the thought that, like, the train could detach from the track and fall off? They obviously have fail-safes to prevent anything.
Okay, I think it's too the fact that it would just like break right as soon as it tilts, like, and you would just be sitting there tilted. That would freak me out.
Yeah, I don't know if that's possible. It could be. I don't know for sure.
I don't care if it's not possible or not. The fact that it could even have a slight chance of being possible. No, because it would, our luck, it would happen to me. It would happen to me. And I would be like, never again am I getting on a roller coaster. So I'm going to try and enjoy the roller coasters I like. And take the chance. You know what? You can get on it all you want.
There's the other tilt coaster.
If it breaks while you're on it, I'm out. So...
The other tilt coaster that's supposed to open next year, which was actually announced a while ago, but then there's just been some delays in its construction, is a Circuit Breaker is supposed to open in Austin, Texas next year at the Circuit of the Americas. And that one is under construction. So it's not certain whether that will open before Siren's Curse does. My bet is that Siren's Curse will open first just because it's being built at a park that already has a lot of people working there. Like, generally speaking, parks that are established can get construction projects done a lot faster than smaller parks that are, trying to be up and coming,
right.
Which is kind of what Coda Land is anyway. Like I said, the coaster was announced, I think, in 2022. So, like, a long time ago that the Circuit Breaker was announced. So, anyway, regardless, they both look really good. Siren's Curse is supposed to open next year. Hopefully alongside Top Thrill 2 actually opening for an entire season rather than just 10 days. So,
True.
So that'll be interesting. Cedar
Point
Point will essentially have 2 new coasters next year. You know, for the majority of people going, it will be 2 new coasters next year, unless you were one of the few people that got to ride Top Thrill 2 before it closed down for the season. So,
right.
So I do think so. The way that this coaster kind of fell into Cedar Point's lap is kind of interesting. So the coaster was actually purchased by which park was it? I think it was Energylandia, in is it Poland? Is that where I think it's in Poland. I don't know why that doesn't sound right in my brain. I might be wrong about that, but I think it's Poland.
I think you told me that whenever.
Yeah, and so I don't know, for whatever reason they bought the tilt coaster, and then just I don't know if zoning laws prevented that. I don't know what prevented them from building it, but then so Six Flags actually bought it and sent it to Six Flags Mexico, where it's been in storage for I don't know, probably the last 3 or 4 months, and so everyone's kind of been waiting for Six Flags Mexico to make an announcement on this new coaster.
Right.
And then it didn't happen. There's no announcement, like nothing, like no teasers, no anything. So then Cedar Point starts teasing a coaster, and the whole theme that they were teasing was kind of water-based.
Right.
And they had just taken out their Shoot the Chutes flume ride.
Right.
So everyone's like, oh, they're going to get some type of water coaster, or maybe a new water ride, something to replace the Shoot the Chutes ride, because they took out a water ride, they're teasing a water theme. Like, it just made sense. That was my prediction, was like the world's tallest water coaster or something like that. And then lo and behold, they announce a tilt coaster for Cedar Point, and everyone was just
sense? Yeah.
Which is Siren's Curse themed to not like the Little Mermaid type of thing, but like themed to like mermaids.
Sirens.
Yeah, like sirens from
Sirens
like Pirates of the Caribbean mermaid type of thing. So that's kind of a cool theme, I gotta admit. But it was kind of surprising because the coaster doesn't have any water elements. So to go, I don't know.
It would be cool to have like a multi-element, like a tilt and a water coaster kind of. I don't know.
Yeah, they definitely could. So anyway, long story short, seems like Six Flags Mexico also, for some reason, could not build this tilt coaster. And along with Top Thrill 2 having issues, I think Six Flags felt it pertinent to send it to Cedar Point as we're sorry that Top Thrill 2 had such issues. Here's something to make it up to you as the guests.
There you go.
Which has happened before. Kings Island did that back in the 80s when, I think it was the 80s, when the Bat just completely flopped. And so, like, the next year they started doing Backwards Racer as like a kind of an I'm sorry. And then I think they actually opened Vortex pretty soon after that. So that is a thing that parks will do to kind of smooth over a really bad PR situation, is add another ride on top of the new ride that's not working properly. So anyway, Makes sense. Kind of a fascinating little story on how Cedar Point got this tilt coaster that kind of bounced around from park to park until it finally found a home. So, but kudos to Vekoma, though. I mean, Vekoma's killing it right now in the amusement industry. I mean,
they are.
With all the family boomerangs that are opening, and Big Bear Mountain over at Dollywood, and now they got 2 tilt coasters coming in next year.
I really wish I could have gotten on Big Bear Mountain.
We gotta get back to Dollywood.
We were planning on having me go this year, but things didn't work out with it.
So we kind of had to choose between Dollywood and Busch Gardens, and we kind of went with Busch Gardens since we hadn't been there.
I'm glad that we did that.
It did work out.
It was a lot of fun.
You'll have to tune to our trip report on Thursday. We've got a lot to talk about with our trip to Busch Gardens. There was definitely some highs and some lows, and so
it was interesting.
And Haley was actually there for it, which sometimes it's just me talking about my experience, but we are actually both there for this trip report.
Yes,
so that'll
awesome.
be that'll be a good one to talk about.
So grateful I was there for it.
Well, let's dive into our topic for today. I purposely chose a coaster for our episode that Haley was able to get on, because she didn't do all of them.
It's true.
Just because there's some that didn't appeal to her. But so I did purposely pick one that she went on so that she kind of knew what we were talking about. And so, and I gotta say, Busch Gardens Williamsburg may have the most fascinating stories for their lineup of coasters. Like, as I was just trying to decide which coaster to talk about,
Yeah.
like, so many of them just have a really fascinating story, and there's some that aren't there that have fascinating stories too. Like, there's so much history at the park, even though it's only 49, almost 50 years old. There's just been so much that has happened there, and so
That's
kind
cool.
of so
I like that.
today's story included. So we're going to be talking about DarKoaster at Busch Gardens Williamsburg today.
I loved this one. This one was so fun.
You and I actually never got a chance to talk about this after the fact, because
didn't.
you got off and I was like, "What'd you think?" And you're like, "Let's talk about it," because I think our son needed to go to the bathroom, so we're like, "Let's do a bathroom break and then we'll talk." And then we just I think we went to the bathrooms and I saw that Alpengeist was running, and so I was like, they opened it. I gotta get on it before it closes.
Right.
And so ran over to Alpengeist and rode that, and then I don't know, we never actually talked about DarKoaster after that. So we'll talk more in depth about our experience on the trip report, because we got to talk about the history today. But so DarKoaster at Busch Gardens Williamsburg opened in 2023. It is their newest coaster at the park. Just opened last year.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I could find nothing about how much it cost. Like, no estimates,
Really?
nothing. So I got nothing for that. 1,384 feet long, 37 feet tall, which is like nothing.
No.
36 mile per hour top speed. Average 2024 wait time 40 minutes, which is identical to the average wait time for Cheetah Hunt a couple weeks ago. So again, really, really long wait times. Like I've seen like 250-minute wait times for this coaster at times. Like, insane.
I wonder.
Now, it is brand new, so that's part of it. But
yes. I know that, like, when I was in line, for some reason, like, the operators took a really long time. Like,
yeah,
I don't know if that was just me, but
well, it's kind of two things. It's one, it's Intamin, so it breaks down. Bless you.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
So it is Intamin, so it is kind of prone to break down occasionally, which
it broke down.
It broke down while you were in line.
Yep.
So Intamin being Intamin, that'll happen. Also, the trains only hold 12 people, if I remember correctly. Yeah, 6 rows, 2 across, 12 people. Yeah. So capacity is really bad. So, and it's a straddle coaster, so it's a little harder to get into than to just sit down and buckle in. Like, it's a little more, longer process.
Right.
So all of those things kind of combined equal long wait times.
Right.
And it's brand new on top of all of that.
Yes.
So, and it's a family coaster, so it appeals to more people. Like, just everything that could potentially make it a longer line is what's it falls into that category. So.
Right. Yep.
In the Coaster Bot rankings, it ranks at number 177 in the country. Not too bad for a family coaster. Ranks below coasters such as Incredicoaster at Disney's California Adventure, Skyrocket at Kennywood, and Escape from Gringotts at Universal Studios Florida.
That's interesting. It's below Incredicoaster, because I haven't heard good things about Incredicoaster.
What it is just because this is a family coaster, and Incredicoaster is actually like a thrilling coaster. But get this, it ranks above coasters such as Poltergeist at Six Flags Fiesta Texas, Flight of Fear at Kings Island, and Fire Chaser Express at Dollywood. Some coasters that are much bigger than it ranks ahead of those. Huh. So just kind of interesting. Which that can happen with new coasters because they're generally running a lot smoother.
Yeah.
And
it was very smooth. Recency
bias is definitely a thing. So.
Right.
At Busch Gardens Williamsburg, it ranks 6th among the coasters there. So Pantheon is number 1, followed by Alpengeist and Apollo's Chariot. Griffin comes in at 4, then Verbolten at 5, then DarKoaster, and then Loch Ness Monster, Invader, Tempesto at 9, and then Grover's Alpine Express rounds up the lineup at 10 there. Review of the name. I think it's a solid name. When you hear the history of the ride, the name definitely makes sense.
Okay.
So it's the name is a play off of another name that we'll talk about. So a solid name, but also has historical meaning behind it. So that makes it
that's cool.
better in my opinion. So
yeah.
The logo, I like the logo. It's just, I mean, there's not like. It's really just a font, really.
Right.
But I do really like the font. Like, it's got a very, like a gothic type of feel. And this logo's okay, the purple one, but the one that's outside of the ride that has the gold finish on it looks really nice. That one I really like. And that's the logo that they kind of use more because that one's the actual one outside the queue and everything. So, so I think it's a good looking logo.
Yep.
Review the paint scheme and the trains. It's an indoor coaster, so paint scheme, nothing to talk about. But the trains look
are really cool.
nice. I do like the snowmobile style trains. It's kind of interesting. So this is my third. This is probably more discussion for the trip report. Actually, we'll leave that for the trip report. Our actual experience on how the trains, like how comfortable the trains were. Tune into our trip report for stuff like that. But but they do look really nice. I love the paint scheme on them, and they look really good. The pink, black, and yellow. So let's see. Oh, Park's description of the ride, of course. How could we forget?
Here we go. We gotta go real gothic on this.
I don't know. What does that mean?
I don't know.
Escape the storm on DarKoaster, North America's first all-indoor straddle coaster, now open at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. Traveling on snowmobiles across 2,454 feet of track, daring explorers race through total darkness while changing course to avoid the elements. As the weather strikes, riders encounter 4 accelerating launches on this family-friendly dark ride experience. Insert evil laugh. It is interesting when they announced it. They marketed it as the world's first all indoor straddle coaster, and then enthusiasts were quick to point out that was not true. I don't actually know where the other one is, but there's another one somewhere, and so they had to change it to North America's first all indoor straddle coaster. Okay. Customer reviews. This has got to be one of the most fascinating customer reviews that we've done. It has a 2.6 out of 5 on Google reviews.
Why?
We'll get into it. It's interesting. So here's some 5-star reviews to start off, which I think you and I probably fall into this category. 4-star, 5-star. Really it was a good ride. I liked it. So here's 5 stars. The ride is good. I like indoor roller coasters more than outdoor ones. It was well put together and really enjoyed it. Maybe Busch Gardens will get similar rides in the future. Well, there you go. Here's another 5-star. Fun ride. Reminds me of Space Mountain because it's inside in the dark. That's about the last similarity the two rides have, but
yeah. They're very different.
Yes. 5 stars. Fun ride, smooth, not super fast, but just enough. I mean, that's the perfect family coaster, right? Yeah. It's not super fast, but just enough. And then one more 5-star here. My son and I really enjoyed riding the DarKoaster despite waiting an hour and a half. It was worth it. Well, there you go. Okay, now to some of these people that are dropping the reviews, like dropping the average rating review like crazy here. Okay. Here's 1 star. As an avid roller coaster rider who rode all of the non-family coasters, this one made me nauseous and spooked.
Oh, spooked.
Spoopy. Is it really that? No, you're going so fast you can not so fast, but you're flying past things. It's not like anything's jumping out at you.
Yeah, it's not a scary coaster.
No, not really. We expected a very chill coaster with some turns and a great theme. Nope, instead I got a broken neck and vertigo. Okay.
Okay.
How can we
down.
say that DarKoaster gave you vertigo when you went on Alpengeist, which goes upside down 7 times? Like, I know I don't
Apparently we didn't.
I guess I don't know, but
it's still like if you're an avid roller coaster.
Well, yeah, and they say they rode all of the non-family coasters. That would include like Alpengeist or what else? I guess Alpengeist is really the one that goes upside down a lot. But like Pantheon goes backwards and goes upside down a few times. So
yeah.
Anyway. And then this last part here. Ew, gross. Don't ride. Okay.
Calm yourself.
Here's 1 star. Photos are from June. They had some photos attached, and got to the front of the line and wasn't able to get on. Visited Busch Gardens last night again, and of course the ride ended up being down again due to maintenance issues. Just get rid of it already.
No.
I don't think this person realizes they just built it. They're not going to just get rid of it.
Yeah.
But also, this is like 90% of the 1-star reviews is just it closed down right when we got to the front of the line, or we waited 2.5 hours and then it shut down and they kicked us out of line.
I can see the frustration with that, because
yes.
I mean that happened to us.
It did happen to us, and Haley,
so
and I purposely bought that because I knew that we probably would need it, and we did.
Yeah, especially with us being from out of state. Like,
yeah, and we're only there a couple days,
and
so, and we're having to parent swap because we had the kids, and so like that, we're kind of multiple things going on there.
We'll mention this again during our trip report, but I highly recommend if you're out of state, you only have like 1 or 2 days, and you're with your kids, get a fast pass. Like, it's worth the money.
Yeah, it's tough
and
because
just get one, because then you just parent swap.
Yeah, so one person uses it, and then the other person, you do the parent swap.
It was worth it.
Yeah,
so.
it's tough because like, I don't know. It's tough because I know that's like a frustrating thing to like be in line for so long, and I know those quick queues are expensive. Trust me, because I had to pay for one. But man, sometimes it's just worth it to fork over the extra cash to make sure you actually get on the ride.
Right.
So,
absolutely.
and I know that some people that's not financially plausible for you, and so I understand why that's a frustrating thing for a lot of people that are leaving these bad reviews.
Right.
And I think that it's so bad for DarKoaster because 1, like we said, it's got terrible capacity, and 2, it's brand new, so people are expecting to go ride the new coaster, and then they don't get a chance to, or it eats up half the day just to get one ride on one coaster.
Right.
It's a tough thing, and I get that, and I think that's more so the ride experience being poorly reviewed. I think it's more so less so the ride experience and more so the maintenance, the maintenance issues and stuff like that. Intamin being Intamin and all. So here's another 1-star. We are excited to wait 2 hours and 20 minutes on opening day to ride it. Part of the experience and all. Theming was good on the way to the loading area, but we noticed that no one getting off the ride was smiling or excited or showing any emotion at all. Okay. The ride was a DarKoaster. Okay, hold on. Are we really complaining about the fact that the ride called DarKoaster is a dark coaster? Is that really what we're doing here?
What were they expecting?
I don't know. Like, and I've seen some people say that, it's just like flashes in the dark and there's just lights, and I'm like, okay, we're not at Disney World. Like, this is a regional seasonal park. Like, you can't expect too much out of Busch Gardens. I don't know. I've heard similar people say things about Fire in the Hole where it's just like, this is not Disney World. You cannot use that as your measuring stick when you're riding this. You have to come into this saying, this is a regional park that has limited funds. This isn't a multi-billion-dollar corporation building this. And so, that's kind of a lot of, I've seen some people. So, this was, again, another ridiculous review. 1-star, slow, no G-forces, graphics didn't make it better. The launches did not launch you. Quote, the launches did not launch you. What are we talking about?
I don't don't mean to like complain against like these
I don't like
reviews.
I don't like being mean to people that write reviews, because it's like I get it. People are entitled to their opinion.
Right.
But when it says the launches did not launch you, I don't know how to interpret that.
Yeah, that one's a bit confusing. So.
It says, even for a family coaster, if this was in Sesame Street Land, the kids would walk off very disappointed. What? That is not true at all.
I thought the launches packed
Wow.
lunch. Like,
I know. I was taken aback. Like, obviously it's nothing like a powder keg or a Pantheon or whatever, but it was decent.
I
like,
thought it was
yeah.
unexpected. And
I got getting into more details for the trip report, but
I know, but it's hard to not.
It is.
I feel like we should have done a trip report.
That's usually what we do, but just the way our calendar lined up, it didn't work that way. But because when we were going to do the Paraswap thing,
right?
And then, but you were saying that you wanted to go eat because you were feeling a little nauseous because you were hungry. And so I'm like, I had said, well, we can do DarKoaster because that's a family coaster. You should be fine. I remember riding it and getting off being like, oh, I hope that doesn't make her sick, because that was a little more intense than I expected it to be. And then, you know, it broke down, and so we had to come back later anyway. But so it was fine. But so then for saying it's like slow, no G-forces, I remember thinking it was better than I thought it was going to be. And I've been on a lot of coasters. So anyway, it's just strange. Well,
because I mean, even the person I rode with, because I was a single rider and I saw that there was another single rider, and he agreed with me. He was like, that thing was awesome, like that was really cool. And you know, so I don't know, I kind of disagree with a lot of these reviews.
It's
really
strange.
sad.
Sometimes most of the times I agree with a good portion of the reviews, but I very much disagree with a lot of the reviews this time around, which is kind of strange.
Yeah.
So there's other complaints I could get into, but I'll just close with this one that made absolutely no sense. It's ridiculous. 1 star, worst thing in the whole park, built and designed by rat armies. So boring, slow and lame, a rat coaster would be better. Cockroach in my seat. Long wait for ride that barely worked. Please get rid of it and replace with rat Rolla ride. I have no idea what this person just said.
Wow.
Designed by rat armies? This person may have been on something when they wrote this review.
I have no idea.
I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm missing something, or maybe I'm out of the loop on a joke or something. I don't know.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
That one was
there you go. There's some
very interesting
interesting customer reviews for DarKoaster. Well, there's your customer reviews for DarKoaster. Let's talk about the history of DarKoaster at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. Yes. So let's hop into our time machine and pull down the lap bar. Keep your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the time machine at all times.
Yes.
And let's go back to 1975. All right.
Pretty far
not too bad. So.
For a new coaster.
Yeah, I told you there's a lot of history going on at this park, and this ride included. And more so than I even thought, because I knew part of the story of this ride,
right?
But I only knew back to like 2001-ish. And then when I started doing more research, I'm like, wow, this actually goes all the way back to the opening of the park, which is where we're starting today. Like,
that's cool.
From the opening of the park till now is just like it's all been connected.
I really like that. I like that there's a lot of history.
Yeah, there's a lot of history here.
Let's do it.
I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Park Lore. They had a really, really great article about the history of DarKoaster and everything kind of leading up to it. So I'll be sure to include that when you follow. If you go to,
we've gotten a lot from Park Lore.
They do some really good stuff, and there's
shout out to them.
Yeah, and they later on I'll be showing you. They actually did a side-by-side layout for one of the rides that used to be in this location, and then DarKoaster. So
That's cool.
Anyway, so a lot of great stuff. They've done a lot of research on this, and so I'll be sure to include a link to their article when I post all the pictures on at least on X. On Instagram, links aren't really that helpful, but if you want to read the article, you can just, if you search Park Lore DarKoaster, it'll come up, or you can go to our X account and you'll be able to find I can never decide whether to call it Twitter or X.
It's X.
I know it is, but I always interchange it. I still call them tweets too, which...
Are we supposed to call them X's?
No, just posts. Yes, I don't like it this much. Anyway, May 16th, 1975, Anheuser-Busch would open a new amusement park in Williamsburg, Virginia. I bet you know which park we're talking about. So this was their second park following kind of what was somewhat unintentionally building a park in Tampa, kind of what we talked about in our Cheetah Hunt episode. They basically built a brewery with some gardens and some animals, and then that just kind of grew and grew and grew and eventually became an amusement park. Yeah. So this park was definitely built to be an amusement park. It was kind of like, this is Busch Gardens 2, so to speak. And so Williamsburg is kind of a touristy area with like a lot of colonial touristy stuff there. And so there's already tourism happening there. So it was a good spot for a park.
Yeah. I remember like our driver was like, "Oh, did you go and see this and this and this?" We're like,
we don't have time. We're just here for
car. Like,
oh, that's true. Yeah,
car, so
we
just like shuttled to the park every day.
Yeah. So
anyways.
But so this new park, where Busch Gardens Tampa is focused on African culture and even more so animal encounters, this new park would be themed to various European countries, less focused on animals and more focused on entertainment. So,
however, there are animals.
There are some animals. So, the new park would open as Busch Gardens the Old Country, is what it originally opened as. And then eventually they changed the name. It actually was called Busch Gardens Europe for a couple years, but since like 2000, I'm not going to try to guess the year. There was like a couple years it was called Busch Gardens Europe, but for the most part, over the past 20 and 30 years, it's been Busch Gardens Williamsburg. So on opening day, the park had named areas themed to England, France, Germany, Italy, Scotland, and Ireland. So we'll be spending the majority of our time in Germany today, and that is where DarKoaster is located. So there are actually two German sections in the park. There's Oktoberfest and Rheinfeld. Rheinfeld opened with the park in 1975. That's where like Alpengeist is, and it's where you were sitting on the bench while Parker was watching all the monsters. Yep, that's Rheinfeld right there. So it's themed to the German Alps. And then Oktoberfest would fully open in 1976 and is themed to Bavaria, which is in southern Germany. So there you go. Well, geography lesson for you there.
Okay.
On opening day, the one roller coaster that Busch Gardens had on opening day was a Schwarzkopf jumbo jet by the name of, I should have looked out how to pronounce this because it's probably German, but I'm just going to call it Glissade, which is probably not correct, but that's what we're going to go with. Unless
anybody speaks German, please correct us.
It's probably not how you say it, but anyway. Now, despite its small plot of land, the coaster still hit 60 miles an hour, which is, I mean, just looking at this, that's crazy.
Yeah.
This thing hits 60 miles an hour. Basically on the plot of land that's like the same size as like a wild mouse, right? 60 miles an hour.
That's fast.
That's wild. So, I also had the thought that I wonder if the reason the coaster ended up in the German section of the park is because they purchased it from Schwarzkopf, which is obviously a German manufacturer of coasters. I couldn't find anything to verify that, but I would not be surprised if they were like, hey, why not put it in the German section?
Why not? Yeah.
Very few of this model were ever constructed. From what I saw, there was only 7 that were ever built, and the only 2 you can ride nowadays are in France and Belarus, I think was the other one. So yeah, so you have to travel a long ways to ride a coaster like this one ever again. But would operate in the Oktoberfest section of the park until 1985. During that time, the park would expand its coaster selection by adding Loch Ness Monster in 1978 and Big Bad Wolf in 1984. So with those two coasters kind of serving as the headliners, the park decided to sell Glissade, and they sold it to a park in Mexico. And it would actually operate in Mexico as Tornado until just a few years ago. It was finally demolished. So
that's a bummer. It looks like fun.
Yeah, it does look like fun. So there are coasters very similar to this that are still open. Not identical, but similar. There's one at Lagoon. The original Zambezi Zinger was actually a very similar model to this. And then there's one at Six Flags Great America called Whizzer, which is very similar. So there's a couple. But
I guess, yeah.
Maybe
we'll just have to try one of those, yep.
So the plot of land that Glissade sat on would be empty for about 10 years before the park decided to build something in that spot. So they decided they wanted to expand the park's family rides, and they wanted to build a coaster. So why not put a wild mouse there, right? Because that's what everybody was doing in the 80s and 90s. So they bought a wild mouse from Mock Rides to construct in that plot of land, and they named it Wild Izzy. Okay, you ready for this? Why did they name it Wild Izzy? Well, Busch Gardens was a sponsor for the 1996 Summer Olympics, which were held in Atlanta, which is about 9 hours from the park, so not too far. And so they named the coaster after the 1996 Olympic mascot, Izzy. So here's...
What the... What even is that?
I know, isn't... This is some real 90s stuff right here.
That's
like this is so 90s.
And like wearing that on a t-shirt would be the coolest thing ever in the 90s.
Oh yeah, that absolutely.
Would be the it thing.
Yeah. Actually, the reception to Izzy was not that great, from what I understand. I actually have this. Okay, quick tangent here, because I was like, "What are we talking about here?" So at the 1992 Olympics, they introduced Izzy, kind of like during the closing ceremonies, I think. Which, if I remember correctly, 92 the Olympics were in Barcelona, and then they. In preparation for the next Olympics during closing ceremonies, they introduced Izzy, which was the first animated mascot for the Olympics. I don't know.
What the heck?
So, get this.
I didn't even know the Olympics had mascots.
The American... ACOG, I'm going to guess that's like American something Olympic group. I don't know. They commissioned an animated television special entitled Izzy's Quest for Olympic Gold to promote Izzy and expand his backstory. Why? Why are we expanding the backstory of an Olympic mascot?
That's really
You ready for this?
Okay.
Here's part of the plot. I'm not going to read this whole thing because this is ridiculous. This has nothing to do with our story today. But I was just shocked. A torchbearer runs through Olympia all the way to Atlanta to light the Olympic cauldron. The flame is revealed to contain an alternate universe known as the Torch World.
What even? Okay.
Torch World, described as being above the stadium, depicts rolling hills, mountains, columns, and other terrain that appear similar to depictions of ancient Greece. The Torch World citizens can be seen performing everyday activities in an Olympic fashion. As Izzy plays basketball in his bedroom, we see Izzy's morphing powers as he turns into the ball, launching himself into the net.
What?
George, Izzy's father, scolds him by advising that Torch World citizens do not compete in the Olympic Games. Izzy brushes off his father and remarks to himself that he'll try out for the Games anyway. This goes on.
What the heck?
Like, Izzy goes to the Tribunal of Elders to convince them to let him participate in the games.
Oh my gosh.
I'm reading this at 2 a.m. going what is happening right now?
My brain hurts.
Why am I reading this?
It's am I dreaming?
I know. I'm what is happening right now? Oh my gosh, this is... Anyway,
that's a strange one.
We could have done a whole episode about Izzy, man. This is ridiculous. So that is what this little wild mouse is named after. Here you go. There's a sign for the ride. There's a...
Good old Wild Izzy.
There you go. What does the sign say? Proud sponsor of the 1996 Olympic Games. So there you go. There's a picture of Izzy right there.
That's really funny.
Yeah, that's wild. So...
Well, that's
anyway,
why it's called
Wild Izzy. So, after the 1996 season, so after the Olympics are over and everything, the park elected to rename the coaster Wild Mouse. Like,
Wow.
oh, wow, okay. Now, to their credit, they did name it Wild Mouse, and mouse is spelt M-A-U-S, so the German spelling. So, okay, at least a little bit of creativity in there. Oh, wow. There's a lot going on already. We haven't even, we've barely scratched the surface of the episode, and already this is just a crazy.
Good stuff.
Oh, so Wild Mouse would operate until the end of 2003, so about 7 years at the park. In February of 2004, Wild Mouse was sent to Busch Gardens, Tampa, where it was renamed Cheetah Chase, which we talked about in our last episode.
Hey, it's all connected.
I know. I didn't even know that all this was connected when I was putting this episode together. I'm like,
genius.
Oh, that's where it came from. It was on the plot of land where DarKoaster is now. And then, Cheetah Chase was renamed to Sand Serpent because Cheetah Hunt was constructed. And then Sand Serpent got torn down last year for their new coaster that opened this year. So, it's all connected. So,
wait, what was
it's all connected. There you go. Oh, okay. So all this is going on. Park officials were working on a really ambitious and exciting new project for Busch Gardens Williamsburg. Now, construction had already begun on the plot of land where Wild Mouse once stood, but no official announcements had been made. This is like mid-2004.
Okay.
So then on December 15th, 2004, which I think is... they might have a Christmas event, so the park may have still been open. Busch Gardens finally announced what they had been working on, which was the Curse of DarKastle, which was a state-of-the-art hybrid dark ride and motion simulator. Now, the park had been park officials had been inspired to build an attraction like this after, in 1999, Universal Studios opened The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man at Islands of Adventure, which to this day is considered one of the best dark rides ever constructed.
I don't think I went to
I don't
that
think
one
you did either, because you were feeling kind of motion sick, and I think, did you try one motion simulator while we were there, and after that one you were like,
it was
no.
one of the Hogwarts ones.
Oh yeah, we went on Forbidden Journey, and after that you were like, no more.
No. They still make me sick. I really don't like them that much, but
so I did get to ride Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man, and it is very good. It's a very good ride. So it's not exactly my cup of tea when it comes to dark rides, but it is very good. I see why a lot of people like it so much. So Busch Gardens kind of wanted to build something similar, which essentially is this. It's a roving motion simulator vehicle. So, it's like the vehicle moves, but also can it can move around, but it moves and moves. So the seats move, but also the actual vehicle can move around. And it also the ride combines 3D projection animation, physical sets, onboard audio, and then practical effects like wind, water, fog, temperature changes, and all kinds of stuff. So it's really, they classify it as a 4D experience, right? It's,
right.
3D animation, but then also like actual practical effects to kind of immerse you in the experience.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. And you can find lots of rides like those especially at Disney and Universal. Mm-hmm. But something like this at a regional park is pretty unheard of, honestly. Yep. So, so here's some of the renderings for the outside of the structure. This is the actual kind of layout of the ride that they kind of built in computer animation.
I love the outside of the attraction.
Yeah, very cool.
Very detailed.
Mm-hmm. So, and then, so here's the actual vehicle. So this is some technical stuff that I don't understand. But the one thing I do understand is
pretty.
that...
I like those.
Yeah, they're really cool. I do like it's kind of got like a Haunted Mansion-esque feel to it. So
I like it.
Yeah, and then there's obviously some really technical language that I don't quite understand. But there's a video, though, that I'll show you, kind of just to show you how somewhere in all these millions of tabs, here it is. So I'll mute this just because people listening, you won't really get to see. But this is just kind of showing how the vehicle actually worked. And not only is it, capable of moving up and down, but it could spin completely around. And so there's...
It's even moving side to
yeah,
side
moving
a little
side
bit.
to side, back and forth. Like, it's just...
shakes. That's cool.
So, it could, it could simulate pretty much any type of terrain. And so, and you can kind of, because this was a backstage tour that this video is taking, you can kind of see the pneumatic pieces underneath. And,
that's impressive.
And so,
for Busch Gardens.
Yeah, for a regional park, like this is
cool.
Quite technologically advanced. And so now obviously they didn't design this themselves. They actually worked with a couple other engineering what's the word I'm looking for?
Like
engineering companies to work with this. So yeah, it was pretty impressive for a regional park to be, taking on a project like this. Now,
it's a big project.
Definitely. Now, and not only that, the storyline was completely original. Like, they didn't base it on an IP or anything. Like, the story is completely from scratch.
I really like when parks do that.
Right.
That's
It's very cool. So, now they did draw their inspiration from a real life story. Now, it draws its inspiration from King Ludwig II of Bavaria, which... this section of the park is meant to mimic Bavaria. So, like, they're even staying true to
that's cool.
the section of Germany that they're trying to mimic. So,
yeah.
Now, King Ludwig this is what is true. This is the true story behind it.
Okay.
King Ludwig spent most of his family's fortune on castles and art during his reign from 1864 to 1886. When his debt spun out of control, he was deemed insane and taken into custody.
Whoa.
And then he was found in a lake soon after, and it was ruled suicide by drowning. But then when they did the autopsy, no water was found in his lungs.
What the?
That's the end of the story.
What the?
That's all we know. So that's
wild.
That's a mysterious story in and of itself. But
I want to know more.
I know.
Go do some research.
Pretty fascinating.
Now. That's cool.
Now, his most notable castle was I'm going to try to say this properly, the Neuschwanstein Castle, which the ride structure is loosely based off of. So they, took this castle
and standing.
Mm-hmm, yeah, this is a modern picture from Bavaria, I believe. So
want to go?
Isn't that impressive?
That's really pretty.
Yeah. So they used this. It's not like a copy of the castle, but they use this to inspire the architecture when designing the outside of Curse of DarKastle.
Right.
So the park's creative team took the real-life story of King Ludwig and turned it into this story from the ride. So I'm just going to read this verbatim because this was dialogue from the pre-show, actually. Like, there was kind of like a haunted mansion where you would have like a room that you would come in and they would close the doors and there'd be a pre-show before you got on the ride.
Love that. Okay.
Awesome stuff, right? So here's the story of the ride.
Okay.
Long ago, in the deepest heart of the Black Forest, a young prince lived, unloved and neglected, in a dark castle. Like the ghostly horrors that always grow in secret shadows, Prince Ludwig grew to be a troubled child. Soon, even the kindest of servants avoided his evil gaze. One dark winter's night, as Ludwig wandered the lonely, frozen grounds of the castle, an old woman appeared. Outraged at this intrusion, Ludwig howled in fury. There in her place stood a snarling wolf. As her angry yellow eyes bored into Ludwig's, she revealed his dark destiny, wicked ruler of a corrupt kingdom. Guided by the wolf, Ludwig set out to take the throne. His parents tried to put an end to his ruthless ambitions, but they mysteriously vanished. Mad Ludwig became king and transformed the castle into an impenetrable fortress with secret passageways to terrify his guests. Soon the treasury was empty. Ludwig's advisors tried to overthrow him, but he just laughed and threw a lavish winter festival in their honor. That night, Mad Ludwig took his guests on a tour of his castle in a fleet of golden sleighs. No one knows what really happened, but they say the walls echoed with terror. The next morning, the sleighs were found in their stalls, but no one ever found Ludwig or his party guests. And to this day, the castle remains frozen in time.
Oh, that's a really cool story.
So,
love that.
So, and that's where you, as the guest, enter the story, is kind of right. As that's the backstory of the ride, and then you enter, right? So, So fans were ecstatic about this, right? We were saying,
really
like
cool.
for a regional park to get such an in-depth dark ride is like, I mean, coasters are always exciting, but a good dark ride outside of Disney or Universal is hard to find.
Right.
They're a dime a dozen, or they're not. Coasters are a dime a dozen. Dark rides are much more, like,
they're rare.
They are rare.
Yes.
So outside of Florida and California, essentially. So construction continued through the early months of 2005. They planned to open it in the spring. The ride system was actually designed by Oceaneering Entertainment Systems, who had helped with other attractions like Transformers at Universal Studios and Revenge of the Mummy at Universal Studios. So other rides that, are pretty well known at Universal, which is obviously a well-known park. So then on May 1st, 2005, Curse of DarKastle officially opened to the public. Now, it's hard to do like a full ride through for dark rides, so I'm just going to kind of give a brief summary of the actual ride experience. So following the pre-show, riders would embark on a thrilling sleigh ride through the haunted castle, where guests would encounter ghostly apparitions, demonic figures, and sinister supernatural events. The journey begins with the sleigh entering the forest outside the castle, where gnarled trees with ghostly faces seem to warn the riders to get out, including the ghost of Ludwig's mother warning riders to exit the castle walls because Ludwig had no power there. Once inside the castle, the riders are confronted by a series of frightening spectacles, including animated suits of armor, a flaming ghostly manifestation of Ludwig, and a terrifying sequence in the kitchen filled with flying knives. As the ride progresses, there are encounters with Ludwig's mother, a fiery battle between Ludwig and his mother, and a simulated free fall from the castle's turret, crashing into the glass conservatory below. The final confrontation resulted in Ludwig lunging towards the guests before realizing he had left the castle walls. Ludwig would turn to ice and shatter, spraying riders with water. As the vehicle kind of heads off to the station, his voice echoed through the hall, "You will never escape," as the sleigh returned to the Great Hall and guests disembarked. So, that's obviously really cool. there's a lot more in there that actually happens, but just to give a brief little description of how the ride went. So, the pre-show was about 1 minute and 40 seconds, and then the actual ride lasted about 3 minutes and 20 seconds. So, actually, it's a pretty long ride, actually, So the ride was very well received among guests. The immersive ride experience was really thrilling and unique for, like I said, a non-Disney or Universal park. And so there's actually a quote. This is a quote from the Park Lore article that just really perfectly describes the experience people were having. Yeah. So I just wanted to quote this directly from the article. It says, "Curse of DarKastle was a stunning, unthinkable headliner that a regional seasonal theme park had no business featuring. With a cutting-edge technology that industry experts would never have thought to live outside Florida or California, the ride brilliantly reutilized the ride system in a whole new way, a haunted house." Which is true. I mean, none of the Universal or Disney rides that are similar to this have ever done it in like a scary fashion, so to speak. It's always been in kind of like just thinking off the top of my head, you have like superhero ones. A lot of them are like action movie themed. Thinking over to like the Disney Omni-Movers, it's like Star Wars, and then there's like a Mickey one. So, and like the Omni-Movers aren't exactly the same because they don't move back and forth and side to side. But
right.
But yeah, like it's never been done in like a haunted house, like spooky type of ride before. So, which I love that. Yeah, so it was pretty interesting. Now, some guests felt that the actual ride experience was too tame, that it was just a haunted house, but you rode in a car, essentially. And Busch Gardens actually took the feedback to heart and actually overhauled some of the ride scenes during the 2005 off-season. They dialed up the scare factor at the expense of some of the actual dialogue. So, you missed out on some of the story after the initial 2005 season. But it seems like people are mostly pleased with the changes. So if you want the full details, because I could go into like all the little itty bitty pieces that they changed, but
this would be a fun one to like go back and do a full episode on.
Yeah, you definitely could do a whole episode, maybe even two, about just the Curse of DarKastle, because there's so much here. But
Yeah.
and dark rides in particular, there's more things to talk about than roller
Right.
coasters.
Yeah, I could agree with that.
But if you want the full details of everything they changed, you can check out Park Lore's article, or even the Wikipedia page for Curse of DarKastle had a lot of details in it. So some dark ride enthusiast was very detailed in putting everything in the Wikipedia article, which
That's cool.
I found helpful. So
Yeah.
so this is such a great concept. Everybody loved it. What happened?
Yeah,
Why is this not here now? This opened in 2005. That's not that long ago. Now, so here's what happened. The unfortunate thing with dark rides, more so than coasters, and especially technologically advanced dark rides, is that they require a lot of maintenance. So, especially just with, we're talking about vehicles that move, in all directions, but also have pneumatic, there's so much going on with the vehicles, right?
Yeah.
This is also a ride that involves animation, which means updating the scenes when they become outdated, because 3D animation is such a rapidly improving industry that within 10 years, like that animation could just look so old and outdated.
Right.
In fact, the Spider-Man ride that we've been referencing opened in 1999, and then in 2011, so 12 years after it opened, they actually completely reanimated the ride from scratch and switched all the projectors to 4K just to help the ride keep up with improving technology. And so that's why that ride has stood the test of time, even though it's 25 years old now.
Right.
Busch Gardens didn't seem to... Either they weren't able to afford to do that or didn't want to pay to do that for DarKastle. This also kind of fell into a time where just the SeaWorld parks were not really in a great place financially. And so there were a lot of budget cuts being made across the chain, not just at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, but at all the parks. And so some special effects fell into disrepair over the years. The park continued to add other rides. So, as new rides get built, the priority for the older rides, that kind of falls down the totem pole as far as where the refurbishment money is going to go, right?
Right.
And so, over time it just kind of became less popular. Still a lot of people enjoyed it, but, it wasn't as popular as it used to be when it opened in 2005. So we fast forward to September 2017. So 12 years after the ride opened. Curse of DarKastle closed in September of 2017. And a lot of guests feared the worst, but actually the ride was transformed into a haunted house for that year's Howl-O-Scream event. And so
That's cool.
So the name was Frostbite was the name of this haunted house. And so,
as much as I don't like scary things, that's cool.
Well, and get this, they removed the ride vehicles and people actually walked through the attraction.
Okay.
And so they had like scare actors in there, and they used the screen projectors and had like different animation on them than just the ride.
That's
so it was
terrifying.
It was completely from scratch, and you basically were walking through this dark ride instead of riding on it.
I don't think I could do it.
It's kind of interesting.
I don't think I could do it. Nope.
So they utilized the castle's icy aesthetic, which, it's always had a kind of a wintry, icy theme. And so, theming it to Frostbite, and like all the monsters were like ice themed and things like that.
I see that.
So
that's a really cool...
It's kind of interesting.
Like they use the prosthetics really well in those. So that's cool.
So they repurposed it for a haunted house for 2017.
Cool.
Now, park guests expected the ride to return for the annual Christmas Town event because it's a ride that's in a heated building, so it can operate year-round, no matter how cold it gets or how hot it gets. It can keep operating. But nothing happened. It stayed closed during Christmas Town for 2017. So park officials were actually asked about it, and they said that the ride was still operable, but due to high maintenance costs, it had not been decided when the ride would reopen. So then just a few weeks later, basically like a month after all this, Christmas stuff, on January 23rd, 2018, Busch Gardens officially announced the permanent closure of Curse of DarKastle after only 13 years of operation.
And they didn't let anybody have a last ride. Of course not. So
that's
the lamest part.
I don't know why parks don't. It's this thing, which is funny because now we've talked about 2 Busch Gardens parks 2 episodes in a row that this has happened.
Yep.
And it's just a fascinating thing where it's like people have so much, and like they have this really nice send-off of like we say goodbye to an iconic dark ride frozen in our hearts and in our memories, and it's like, okay, so why didn't you let people like say goodbye if it was so important to us? Like we just, I feel like sometimes park officials are very hastily making decisions and don't pause to think about what that means for the guests. Mm-hmm. And I understand sometimes it's a money thing. It's like, how much money is it going to be to put the ride vehicles back on just to run it for a couple weeks and then tear it down? Like, but you just got to you have to have a little bit more forethought, I think. Like, I always, this is the one I always come back to. I always come back to Silver Dollar City and Fire in the Hole.
Amen.
They announced the closure of the ride before the park even opened for the year. Right. Like, the park opens in March, and they announced in February that the ride would be closing in December. Like, that's how far in advance the park was thinking to not only... And it's not only a good way for, like, to... like, give the ride a good send-off, and people that have fond memories of it get a chance to go ride it one more time. But it's also a brilliant marketing tactic.
It is.
Like, there's people that went to Silver Dollar City in 2023 that had never been to Silver Dollar City before because they're like, oh, I got to get that coaster credit before they close Fire in the Hole.
Yep.
Like, I don't know. It's just, I always come back to Fire in the Hole. I feel like the Silver Dollar City handled that so much better than this was handled.
I can agree with that.
So, anyway. I'll get off my soapbox now.
Tangent over.
So, and we've said that so many times on this show. I don't know why this keeps happening, but anyway. So now,
maybe we're just hoping that people will learn their lesson.
At some point, a park will actually hear us. So now, interesting, they did not demolish the castle, so it was basically gutted. The castle remained, but the whole ride was removed from the inside, and the castle actually continued to operate as a haunted house / I think like you could go in like I think during some Christmas events, this is where Santa would be to like go and see Santa, which is really funny to me. Yes.
That's... I can't wrap my head around that.
It's kind of interesting.
That was interesting.
It's like of all places.
Let's make this a haunted house and Santa's castle.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Haunted Santa.
Slightly odd. Now, obviously, Santa wasn't haunted when they did it, but it's interesting. Like, Santa in a castle is a little odd.
Maybe in Germany.
Maybe Santa has a castle in German lore. So
Saint Nicholas.
I don't know.
All right. All right.
So that happens, like I said, in 2018. So now we fast forward 3 years to 2021. Now, and this part of the story I actually remember because this is now we've crossed over to when I'm now become a coaster enthusiast, and so I kind of this whole next part of the story I kind of watched as it happened, which is kind of fascinating. But so out of nowhere, rumors began swirling about a new attraction coming to the castle. There was rumors that Busch Gardens was planning to utilize the 30,000 square foot show building for a new family targeted roller coaster. Now, there was a lot of people that were kind of doubting this, mostly because the building is, 30,000 square feet sounds like a lot, but by comparison, Rock and Roller Coaster show building is about 70,000 square feet. And I think when we talked about Escape from Gringotts a couple weeks ago, I think that one was like 100,000 square feet or something like that. So huge building. Property, now we are talking about a family coaster, which isn't as big as Rock and Roller Coaster or Escape from Gringotts, but still 30,000 square feet, not a lot to work with. The building is also not that tall because it was designed for a flat dark ride, not a coaster that changes in elevation and goes up and down. So But despite all the enthusiasts that were kind of, I don't know if that's, this might be a false rumor, which happens a lot, right?
Right.
The rumors persisted, and a website that they do some really good stuff for Busch Gardens Williamsburg. They actually follow us on Twitter, and we follow them back. But bgwfans.com, which a lot of people, if you're an enthusiast and you're on X/Twitter, you'll know them. They do a lot of great stuff for uncovering plans for upcoming attractions for Busch Gardens Williamsburg, but they also have like great history stuff. Like they just, anything you would ever want to know about Busch Gardens Williamsburg, you just ask them. Like they know everything. So they unearthed plans for this coaster at one point, just because like the park has to file things with the city of Williamsburg before they can actually build anything, right?
Right.
And so, and
pretty much everywhere you go.
Exactly. And so if people are clever enough and smart enough, they can keep up to date on some of those filings because they are public information.
Right.
And then sometimes they can piece together what the ride is going to be before it's even announced, which the parks aren't really fond of that, but I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So after a year of these rumors, on September 6th, 2022, Busch Gardens Williamsburg officially announced DarKoaster, which I don't have the actual announcement. Do I have it somewhere here?
No, you're... Holy moly, Nathan.
I know, I have so many...
30 plus tabs
I know, open. Here we go. There's the actual announcement there. I know, I have so many tabs open on my research. So here's the actual announcement that they made. What else do we have here? So they announced DarKoaster. It's a multi-launch straddle family coaster constructed by Intamin, which they had just worked with Intamin for Pantheon the year before. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if those were bought in a bundle. Seems unlikely because they're so different.
They're very different,
but it's not impossible because they're both Intamin, I suppose.
Yeah.
Now, the Intamin family launch coaster is not an unusual choice for SeaWorld because there's one at SeaWorld in San Antonio that opened in 2017. And then SeaWorld San Diego actually opened one in 2023 as well. So that could have been a bundle that it was bought in. Maybe they bought two of them, one for San Antonio and one for Busch Gardens Williamsburg. Anyway, they work with Intamin a lot, especially recently. Now, one thing that the park made very clear is that the ride would not just be reusing the Curse of DarKastle building, but the coaster was meant to be a continuation of the story. A sequel, so to speak.
That's cool.
So, now, what I find the most fascinating part about this ride, minus the fact that it's built in a building that used to house a dark ride and now houses a roller coaster, because that in and of itself is fascinating.
That's really cool, yeah.
But the coaster has one of the most unique layouts of any coaster that I've been on, and I don't even know if you noticed it while you were on the ride. We'll see.
Probably not.
How did they manage to fit this coaster into a 30,000 square foot building? Now, when I mentioned the layout at the top of the show, I said that the layout is only 1,384 feet, that's like, I mean, Grover's Alpine Express is probably that long. It's not very long for a coaster. That's pretty short.
Right.
But thanks to two switch tracks, riders actually go through the layout twice.
Okay, I did catch that.
Okay, so you did catch that when you're on the ride. So the actual ride length, I've seen varying opinions on what it's like. It's basically, let's call it 2,400 feet is roughly what the actual length of the ride is. Yeah. So here's how it works. So the ride operates two trains. After dispatch, the first train moves to the launch track and then launches off. After the first launch, there's a switch track behind the launch track that disengages from the station and connects to a banked turn that's at the end of the layout. After riders complete the first loop, there's a second switch track that disengages from the layout and connects to the final brake run. Now, as all this is happening, the second train is being loaded in the station or unloaded or whatever. Mm-hmm. So the first train, passes by the one switch track, it'll connect to the final brakes, goes through the layout again, and then this time, because of the switch track, it'll go into the final brakes. And then both switch tracks will move back to their original positions to prepare for the next train. Here's the actual... Yeah, so here's the layout by Parklore here. So you can see here's the launch track here, and then this switch track right here.
Right.
And then there's like this little section here that goes right by the station, actually. So like here's the station here. It just goes and basically passes by the station and goes again. And then that switch track connects it to and from the brakes. And yeah, so.
That's really cool.
Pretty fascinating.
It's very well thought out.
Yeah, it's a very smart way to make the coaster a lot longer. And because it's in the dark,
you
like
can't even tell.
Some people, like if you're paying attention, you'll notice.
Right.
But especially for families and like if you don't ride coasters a lot, you may not even know. Because the other thing that the
person I rode with definitely did not know. But, I hate saying this, but I'm pretty sure he had one too many that day because he was.
Well, it is Busch Gardens, so there's definitely alcohol to be found at the park.
He was kind of very, very friendly and just
had some liquid courage.
I definitely had some liquid courage that day.
So the other thing that they do to keep the ride interesting is the lighting and the effects that are used are different on the first loop and the second loop.
I was going to say that.
So
that has to be what they do.
So
it would be kind of a boring ride to
ride. It would be much more obvious if the all the effects that they used were the same.
Right.
So there's some lighting that's used. There's some practical like some actual props that are used. And then there's actually some projection mapping that is done. There's a bridge right here. There's projection mapping done. And so we'll talk about the actual ride experience here in a second. But so the projections can change, and then like just the way that the lighting is done can change. Like the first launch is different colors on the different loops, and so it just does make it feel like a full experience, even though you're going through the layout twice. So very interesting. Keeping with the icy theme of DarKastle, they obviously went with the snowmobile themed trains for DarKoaster. So very, very well thought out there. Construction had already been underway for some time when this announcement was made. And obviously people really didn't. I mean, they knew something was going on back there, but you couldn't see because it's obviously in this building that no guests can get into. So, but they had a plan to get it done by the spring, and construction was completed without any serious delays. And on May 19th, 2023, DarKoaster opened to the public and continues to operate to this day. The ride experience is as follows. I will say this description I took from the Parklore article just because they described it really well.
Shout out to Parklore.
They, like I said, they had a lot of great stuff for this episode, so I wanted to
see if we can get in touch with them and like do something with them because they're really cool.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure giving a lot of props to them because they obviously did some really good research for this, but and they just had a really good. I was having a hard time describing the actual ride experience, and they just did it much better. So. Rounding the corner from the loading dock, the train aligns with a corridor of arches similar to the architecture of DarKastle. The snowmobiles accelerate through the arches and out into the darkness. At the end of the launch track, a lightning strike illuminates, sending the snowmobiles tearing up to the left and into the darkness. Riders pass under a snowy bridge with dripping icicles. Above it, purple lightning flashes draw your eye toward the purple specter of Ludwig, gathering power in the storm clouds. The train sweeps under the bridge and to the left, hitting the second launch. The snowmobiles race up and to the right. The train continues through the darkness, passing under the bridge again, this time with the abstract face of Ludwig's spirit glaring down from above. From here, the train finishes the first loop and bypasses the station. The bypass grazes along the one physical set that's remaining from DarKastle, which is the castle's exterior wall, so to speak. At the wall's end, the train is reconnected to the first launch. This time, the lighting has shifted to make the arched corridor appear blue. As before, lightning strikes at the end of the launch, leading to the same turn to the left. This time, the bridge is gone. Instead, it's a hazy cloud of purple with Ludwig's ghostly hand reaching for the train. As before, the snowmobiles turn to the right and hit the second launch, as the lightning flashes on either side of the train as it passes. Riders remain in total darkness for a few seconds before an image of the ghostly king appears, who opens his mouth and swallows the train in a release of fog as the train hits the final brakes. So, there you go. Good description from Parklore. So, the coaster is certainly a one-of-kind of experience, obviously, with the, going around the track twice, and with it being a coaster that was originally a dark ride and as a continuation of the story. There have been mixed reactions since the ride's opening. Obviously,
we read
the reviews,
right.
People having issues with the actual maintenance of the coaster. Like I said, many of the complaints have been about the downtime the ride has. Intamin will be Intamin. The coaster doesn't have great capacity, so downtime leads to really long lines. The coaster has even gone through periods where it was only open on weekends.
Weird.
Which is very odd. The only thing I can think of with that is that there's more maintenance. There's so much maintenance that needed to be done that they just felt like it would be best to just close it for the weekdays to work on it, and then it would hopefully be better for the weekend. I don't know, but it was open the whole time we were there, and we were there on a Thursday and Friday, so not too bad. I do know that there's other coasters that only operate on the weekends, especially in the fall, like Alpengeist and Tempesto, I think, are only open on the weekends during that time frame. Anyway, that's more operational issues with Busch Gardens, which we'll talk about on Thursday, but less so to do with the coaster, I think. Now, I have seen other people that complain that the story isn't that great. Like, it's kind of hard to understand what the actual quote-unquote story is. I mean, okay, I can get that. Especially for you and I, when we went through the quick queue, I had no idea what the story was.
Yeah.
So,
because we literally, walked right up and got on. So it was like...
Yeah, well, because the quick queue goes through the handicap entrance. Yeah. And so you basically bypass the whole queue. So I don't even know if there's stuff in the queue that explains the story or tries to or whatever. Mm-hmm. From my understanding, there's not a lot in the queue either.
Well, but I feel like general public, they really do not pay attention to things in a queue anyways.
Not really.
So.
Some people do, especially if they've been going to Busch Gardens for a long time and remember Curse of DarKastle. Maybe they do, but...
Right.
So, I will say there are rumors that Falcon's Creative, which helped them with the story and the animation of the ride, of the Curse of DarKastle ride, apparently they're the ones that own the IP for the original characters. That's the rumor, at least. So if that's true, that would mean Busch Gardens had to make sure not to cross any legally troublesome boundaries when designing DarKoaster, which would explain why Ludwig looks completely different in this version of the ride. There's also no dialogue, things like that. So that could be the case. It could be that Busch Gardens, just their hands were tied, but they still wanted to do something to honor the old ride rather than just completely overhauling the story for something new.
Right. So
that's just a rumor, but minor complaints aside, most agree that the ride is a lot of fun. The layout is surprisingly fun for its small size. It's enhanced by being an indoor coaster, hence it being ranked higher than larger coasters like Flight of Fear and Fire Chaser Express. So I think the Parklore said this in their article, that it's better looked at as a spiritual successor than a sequel, so to speak.
Okay.
And yeah, I can get on board with that.
I can get on board with that too.
Yeah, it's really just in honor of the original attraction that was here. Less so, this is what happened next. That's kind of the best way to look at it, in my opinion. So.
Yep.
But like I said, the ride is a lot of fun, and that's kind of my opinion too. Obviously, there's not a whole lot to talk about here because it just opened last year. This is kind of the end of the story, but I will close with just one fun little Easter egg. The snowmobiles each have a name and a code written on them. These were voted on by people on social media, so really you kind of had to know what the codes meant because they're kind of tributes to other attractions. The ones that were ultimately chosen, on one train, it has Wild Wolf 9684, which is a tribute to Wild Mouse from 1996 and Big Bad Wolf from 1984. So that's the tribute
like
there.
that.
So you could also say it's a tribute to Wild Izzy because
Good old Wild Izzy.
because it took the wild from the name, not the mouse. So you could say it's Wild Izzy and not Wild Mouse.
No, I don't like that. Definitely
I don't want to give Izzy any credit here.
Poor Izzy.
No, I don't feel bad for Izzy. The people of Torch World, I don't. It's ridiculous. The other train has Frostbite 1719, which is obviously a tribute to the haunted house that was in the castle following the Curse of DarKastle and before the opening of DarKoaster. It operated that haunted house was there from 2017 to 2019, hence the 1719 on the train. So fun little tributes to old attractions on the trains there. So that's a fun little Easter egg that they did. So, and that is the history of DarKoaster at Busch Gardens Williamsburg.
I liked that.
That was a fun little story.
One.
I guess I could show you here. Here's a Park Lore's little side by side of the kind of how it looked before and after. So
I like that.
So it's pretty cool to see that side by side.
To see it side by side.
Yeah,
so it really is genius that they just recycled the building.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. So, and it's probably the first time I've ever seen a ride get replaced by a ride and them still be telling the same story, so to speak. You know, like I'm trying to think of like, you know, if they were to close Fire in the Hole and then reopen, because they basically just copy and pasted it almost verbatim and just did it like a brand new version. What this would be is if they closed Fire in the Hole and then in the old building built a brand new version that was what happened after the fact. Like it was a completely new story, but still in the same universe. So
did they tear down the old building? Do you know?
The building is still there. I'm assuming it's been completely gutted at this point, but the building is still there. So I'm not sure what the plan is. So definitely could be an expansion plan to keep going out that direction past Powder Keg and kind of open the park that way.
I mean, they did pull a lot of teasers on this.
There's certainly stuff coming. So $500 million in investment over the next 10 years. That's crazy.
Insane amount of money.
That is crazy. So
I mean, kudos to them. That's awesome. But
the website I mentioned earlier, BGW fans, they said that they want Herschend to buy Busch Gardens Williamsburg and invest that kind of money into Busch Gardens. I'm like, that would be pretty interesting. That would be interesting. It does kind of fit in their wheelhouse too, because Herschend's other parks, minus Kentucky Kingdom, but both Dollywood and Silver Dollar City are built in tourist areas, kind of like Williamsburg. So they do kind of have a similar thought process there of, you know, having an amusement park that's built in an area of high tourism. So anyway, so
I could get behind it.
Could be interesting. So. Well, thank you for tuning into this episode of the podcast. And as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, thanks for giving us a couple extra days to make sure it was properly well done. I knew that this story had so much going on, and so I wanted to make sure it was properly done. I didn't want to just skim over such an interesting story, and so I wanted to make sure I got, you know, all the details I wanted to. And be sure to tune in on Thursday for our Busch Gardens Williamsburg trip report. Got a lot to talk about. We were there for a couple days, had some lows, but did have some highs. So, you know, all in all, it was a good trip. Just a couple things that could have made it better. And so, but obviously we'll talk about all the great stuff too. So, and
we'll get to talk about our son.
He had way more fun than we thought he would.
So funny. So we'll explain why.
Yeah, we'll explain why on Thursday. So, and then a week from Thursday is our annual Halloween special. You're not going to want to miss that. We talk about a defunct coaster for our Halloween special, and it's not Busch Gardens, but it is a park that we have been to recently. I will leave it at that. So, very, very cool story to talk about that day. So, and anything else from the GP?
No.
don't listen to the Google reviews. DarKoaster is better than they tell you.
It's true.
The line is horrendous though, so you might want to quit queue.
Or do it like first thing when you get there.
Yeah, run to the back of the park. Get there before everyone else.
Yes. No, I disagree.
Yeah, it is a very it's a lot of fun. It's a fun little ride.
It's worth it. It's worth it.
So, well, thank you for tuning in to this episode, and we will see you in the next one.